So Dale, it's good to see you, and welcome to By Design.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to be a part of this business, and excited to get it up and running and out there into the world.
Yeah. So tell everybody a little bit about By Design and what is it?
Yeah, By Design is a consulting firm that helps business owners discover what's next. As we've grown companies, everyone always asks, what's next, what's next, what's next? And a lot of owners haven't had time to think about it. So the whole point of By Design is we're going to help owners figure out what's next, help them navigate the challenges of growing, and hopefully create a roadmap to where they could potentially exit if they want to, when they want to, how they want to.
Right. I always think when we started talking about that question, what's next? Because people ask me that all the time after we sold after we sold Advoco. People keep asking like, what's next? And so I love that question.
Yeah, so funny story just happened today. I was at a luncheon and I asked the person next to me, business owner, he's been in business 10 years. I said, hey man, what? He was telling me about his business. I said, so what's next? And he looked at me and goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, what's next? For like your business? He goes, I've never thought about it. What do you mean? I said, well, you're going to sell it, grow it, do something else, spin it off? He goes, never thought about it. He goes, we've just become profitable, and that's all I've been trying to do. So it's a very interesting, simple question, but difficult to answer.
Yeah, it was funny. I even asked a buddy of mine, and he said, it kind of keeps me up at night. He goes, thinking, because I think sometimes we live in the moment, but we forget about thinking about what's next, and almost like we need to be constantly reminding us of that. And so talk a little bit about By Design Advisors. How'd you come up with the name? What does that mean?
I would love to say we just put it into Chat GPT and it spit out this, great name for us. But really one of our core philosophies at By Design Advisors is you have to be intentional in everything you do. If you're not intentional about it, you're leaving it to chance. So it could be anything. When you're hiring, don't leave your teams to chance. We need to be intentional about how we hire, how we select, how we train, develop, advance people. Your financials, you need to be very intentional about financial. What are the metrics we're going to track? So it's just not leaving things to chance. It's being intentional and setting up processes. So By Design Advisors, we were very intentional in our name, and everything we do with clients, everything we do internally, we do it by design, not leaving it to chance.
Yeah, I love that because, again, my favorite word has always been intentionality. And I always said the difference between success, I think, and failure is being intentional, right? Intentional in everything we do. And, I'll ask somebody why did you do that? Or why did you read this book? Or why did you make that move in your company? And they don't really have a good answer. And so to me, By Design kind of leads us there. And so when I think about some of the stuff, talk a little bit about the roadmap, right? One of the ultimate goals is to help an owner create a roadmap for what's next. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the best thing about a roadmap is everyone just wants to know how to get somewhere. They want the end point, right? Just tell me how to get to 5 million in revenue, how to get to 10 million in revenue. How do I get to Chuck E. Cheese from here? I might have just dated myself with that reference.
Yeah.
And what everyone has to remember is, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? By Design Advisors, where are you starting from? And I think that's a key step. So the roadmap, the first step is we got to figure out where you are today. No right or wrong answer to that, right? It's just what it is. So our roadmap it's a simple 3-step process. It's not rocket science. It's where are you today? We got to figure that out. Then let's figure out where you want to go. And then together, let's create that roadmap and be very intentional about how we're going to get there.
It's funny. I spent a lot of time in New York with the subway system, MTA. It always cracked me up because somebody would say, well, how do I get to this restaurant? Or how do I get to this office? What was the first question I was asked them?
Well, hopefully, where are you?
Where are you? Yeah, where are you? And then when we know where you want to go, then we can create a roadmap. And I think it's to answer that question, what's next, is always starts with where are you? And I think sometimes people always want the answer. They want the Chat GPT answer, or they want the easy button. And so to sit back and to look at where are we and where you want to go, that's how you build a roadmap.
No, I agree. I think you had a post once, and I always forget the golfer, but the golfer was playing around with an amateur. And
Gary Player.
Man, and the amateur said something along like, man, I wish I had your golf swing. And he looked him right in the eye and said, no, you don't. You didn't want to hit that many balls. You didn't want your hands bleeding. And to me, that's kind of, everybody wants that end spot. Everybody wants to arrive where they want to go. But again, if you don't know where you're starting, you're not going to be intentional about how to get there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things as we work with business owners, as we work with leaders, we always have to start with where you are, and we do that through certain assessments. And while you sometimes think it seems fluffy or not, it helps ground everybody in where you are and then where you want to go. So I think it's a big thing that we need to do.
And I think the other thing it does, business owners, for the most part, move fast. That's kind of how they got to where they are. And sometimes you have to slow down. Like, we want to get to the finish line,
Yeah.
It's like, no, let's slow down. Let's take a temperature control. Where are we now? And move forward from there. So people sometimes hear slow down and think it's a bad thing, but to go fast, sometimes you have to slow down.
Right. I used to be in the sewing industry, and it was a weird thing, but as sewers would sew, if they went too fast, they usually made errors. And it was funny is that some of the best sewing machine operators slowed their machine down to go faster, right? Because it gets an even pace. And so I do think that is at the core of understanding where we are, and what we need to do is when we slow down, when we understand where we are, then it gives us room to start to think about where do we want to go and how to get there. So I love that. The other thing that I've run into a lot is people talk about, I'm stuck. Like, a lot of people feel stuck. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think we've all felt that in our careers at some point, where you're just grinding. Like, you're doing okay, right? I'd say you're successful, but it's just a grind. Every day is a grind. Every day there's a people issue or a customer issue or a revenue issue, or we're not growing, and you're just grinding and grinding and grinding, and it turns into Groundhog's Day. And I found what that normally means, it starts to sap your desire, it starts to sap your joy. And again, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but what by Design Advisors, we want to help you rediscover that passion, relight that fire of why you got into this in the first place. And really do that, you got to get off the hamster wheel, right? And that, to me, that's that grind of when you feel stuck, you're just on that hamster wheel, and you might be trying different things and nothing seems to be working, and around you go. And how do you get off of it? How do you move forward?
You know what they say about the hamster wheel? The hamster gets stronger. He gets better at the wheel.
Yeah.
He gets stronger. He's growing, but he's not getting anywhere.
He doesn't advance anywhere.
It is that. And so one of the things about, I think, even feeling stuck is, people are looking for a guide. And so one of the things when we talk about by Design Advisors is your guide to helping you find out what's next. Talk about that word guide.
Yeah, it's an interesting word. It's a powerful word, in my opinion. A guide helps you get somewhere, right? Like, if you're not going to go climb a mountain you've never been on before without a guide. Everyone likes to take vacation, go deep sea fishing, right? You don't rent the boat yourself and just drive out in the ocean and cast the line in, right? You get a guide. These folks that help you, they have experience, they have a process, a framework, some knowledge about what you're trying to do. And the guide is not the hero of the story, right? They're just helping you get to where you want to go. And that's what we want to do. We want to partner with folks that have an idea of where they want to go, but maybe they're stuck, maybe they're uncertain, maybe they just don't have the confidence and knowledge, and we're going to help you get to where you want to go.
Yeah, I love it. I'm always a big fan of the guide, because the guide, and again, you talk about fishing, one of the things is, when I semi-retired, I wanted to go fishing, but I don't know where to go, right? I can take the boat out into the water and I can throw lines out, but there's a lot of questions is, well, what type of fish, what type of lure, what type of depth you need to be in. I don't know anything about that. And so I always find my fishing experiences, I'm stuck. And so to have a guide.
And I imagine, to me, that would be zero fun.
Yes,
going out and just casting stuff in the water and hope something bites
Yeah.
it. Like, to me, that's zero fun. But again, I think that's apt to our analogy here of these owners. Sometimes they're just going out there casting out lines and it's no fun anymore.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, and I'll talk about, is I think being an entrepreneur, being a business owner is a lonely business, right? Who do you talk to about challenges? Like, you can't talk necessarily to your spouse or friends because they don't know what you're going through. And so, talk a little bit more about how that plays into by design.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I did a self-awareness training everywhere I've been, because I think it's so important. Basically, everybody has three critics. You have I always use mom as an example. She's your loving critic. No matter what, you can do no wrong. You're perfect. Every idea is wonderful. So if you talk to that person, everything's great. Then you have your harshest critic who they don't really want you to succeed. So every idea is too big. So you got to find that loving critic who will listen to you, but tell you when you're doing something right, can tell you, hey, Marty, you're on the wrong path here, or maybe you should try this. And I think what By Design can do is be that loving critic / guide for you. We've been there. We've done this. We have a framework. We have a process. We can kind of say, hey, that's good, but here's a better way of doing it.
So speaking of the critic, I want to talk about the 80%. And I think these are some harsh realities as business owners, the 80% rule. Do you want to share with some of these?
We have 3 that we really focus on and share because they're so powerful, I think. 80% of business owners' net worth is tied up in their business one way or another. It's a lot, right? 80% of the value of an organization isn't on the P&L sheet. So again, how do you measure it? How do you figure that out? And then the scary, scary, scary one, in my opinion, is 80% of businesses that try to sell don't.
Right.
80%. So 8 out of 10 companies aren't going to transition, aren't going to sell. They're not going to be able to get that 80% value out of the company.
Yeah, I mean, those are crazy statistics. And I think when I heard those, kind of made me feel like why we have to do By Design, because those are really harsh numbers. And so let's kind of unpack these, each one. So let's talk about 80% of your net worth's tied up in your company, because I felt that, me personally. Talk a little bit about that, how so much of our net worth is tied up in the business.
Yeah, so the organization is probably the owner's biggest asset and its biggest liability. You might have $1 million in the bank. Your company's worth $9 million. So on paper, you're worth $10 million. But you're not, right? Because that $9 million is only on paper. Until someone strokes you a check and pays you $9 million for your organization, you don't have it. So how do you harvest that value? How do you get that value out of there? Or better question, how do we increase that 9 million to 10, 11, 12, 14, right, 18, 20 million and get you where you need to be?
Yeah, I think it's back to just starting to think about what we would call like the wealth gap, right? What does it take if I wanted to retire, right? I can't retire on $1 million. Can I retire on $10 million? And if I can, then that's where I have to go. And so I think a lot of people don't think about how much of their family's legacy, your legacy, is tied up in that. And so it really gets interesting. So.
Yeah, let me just quick HR math on this, because when I say HR math, I was an HR person for a big part of my career. Math was not my strong suit, so I like simple numbers. Let's say you have $1 million in your bank. You've already done the math with your financial advisor. You know you need $10 million to call it quits, retire. But your business is valuated at $5 million. $5 million plus $1 million, you've got $6 million. You have a $4 million wealth gap.
Yeah.
How are you going to close it? You only have 2 choices. Cut back your retirement lifestyle, or increase the value of your business. By Design, we think we can help you increase the value of that business to get you, again, where you're intentionally trying to get to.
And so if you think about that number, and it's interesting that you brought that up, because one of the things I learned about, and there's all kinds of studies and so forth, but what they say is when you go to retire and you try to figure out how much money you need, they call it the 4% rule, right? So if I did have the $10 million, that means at 4%, I have to live on $400,000. If I have $5 million in the bank, I have to live on $200,000. And so it's interesting because a lot of people might get excited, like, oh, I have $1 million. They get excited. I'm a millionaire. 4% says you got to live on 40 grand a year.
Yeah.
And so that math holds out if you don't want to run out of it. So I think as we look at this 80%, it's not only what you think you need, but if you run the 4% number, also gives you an indication of where you want to go.
So circle back to my HR math example. $10 million, I've got $400,000 that I can live on a year. Great. Can do everything I want to do, right? But if I only have the 5 and the 1, I'm cutting that in half. So where are you going to make those cuts if you're not going to increase the value of your business?
Right. So let's talk about the next 80%, right? We said the other scary number and is that 80% of businesses don't ever sell.
Yeah. And I always like to say, can you afford to be part of that 80%? Probably not. And there's a plethora of reasons as why they don't transition, why they don't sell, right? It could be everything from owner dependency, client dependency. You don't have the right team, right structures, right whatever. But it's a scary number that, again, you need to start thinking of 3 years ago. But if you didn't do it 3 years ago, starting today is the next best time. And get intentional about where you're going. There's a gazillion, I don't know the stats on how many small businesses there are in the USA right now. It's a ton. You're not the only fish people are looking at. So how do you stand out in a crowded field?
Yeah.
And By Design will help you do that.
Yeah, one of the things I found in talking with a number of owners, and we talk about their business, and they get so entrenched in the business, right? They're so stuck in there that they don't know how to get out. And I've talked to so many of them that their only way out to them is to just walk away, shut it down. And I'm always shocked by that because I'm like, well, 80% of your net worth is tied up in your business, yet you're so tired of it, you're ready to walk away. And, you know, we talked about this a little bit earlier is sometimes you lose the joy because you don't know what's next. You just are stuck in the grind, the hamster wheel. And so if you can find that joy, not only can you be happier in your life, but you start to unlock the value of the business.
Yeah, one interesting quote, I'm a big quote person, and a quote I heard recently that really hit home is, and it wasn't for business, but it works, is you got to give time, right? And when we're talking about some of this stuff, right, yeah, you may not have your value that you need today, and it may not be a year from now, but if you give time, and you do the right things, you're going to get there.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's one of my intentions going into 2025 is give time for everything, personal, professional. You know, just give time to work. If you're doing the right things,
Yeah.
it'll happen.
That's a great one. I never even thought about that. Is sometimes we think, you know, we have to be so involved, but if we give time, it does free time to think. So, and then the third one, and this one I think gets really detailed to unpack, but you said that 80% of a company's net worth or value is not on the balance sheet. Now, how is that?
It's not, believe it or not. And I know we all think it's the product or it's the whatever, and sometimes it is, but the majority of the time, it's the intangible assets. It's what we call the 4 C's. It's your human capital, it's your client capital, it's your structural capital, and it's your social capital, right? So that's where 80% of your value lies. And I've learned in my career, a lot of folks neglect these 4 things, right? They just want to focus on profit and revenue. If I can get profit and revenue to look good, everyone will, that solves all problems. And revenue and profit does cover up a lot of warts. But if you're not being intentional in those other 4 areas, you're not attractive.
It makes sense. And it was funny. I saw an interview with Howard Schultz, and he was talking about Starbucks. And he made a comment, and he really said, which I think goes to this point, is we're all in the people business, right? We're not in the coffee business. We're in the people business. And I look back, and I even look back at our company at Voco. When I looked at how we got a best-in-class valuation, it wasn't because we had any stellar product. We didn't have any IP. We didn't have any defensible position. What did we have? We had great people that were driven to a common goal. And when you find that magic, that's what drives multiples.
Voco had off the charts human capital. I think they had off the chart client capital. The customers we had, the types of customers, the different sizes, that we weren't relying on just one big fish to feed the entire company. And so when you start looking at what is attractive to potential buyers, right? If you have great people, great clients, my gosh, who wouldn't, a company that's looking to grow, why would they not want that?
Yeah. And so, we always are in the people business, and we're not going to get deep into people right now because
we can.
We can, but we'll talk for hours. But I think we just wanted to start to introduce that because there's actually one other 80% we don't put on our website and some of our literature, but 80% of the companies don't even have a transition or a plan to transition. And so, we probably don't want to beat that one up, but again, you might just talk a minute about that.
No, without having a plan, without being intentional, you're leaving it to chance. You're leaving your 80% net worth, your 80% value, you're just leaving it to pure chance and kind of hoping you get lucky. And that is a strategy. It's not one we would advocate, but it is
called
us.
Vegas, isn't it?
Of all the strategies, that is one of them.
Yeah.
But again, being intentional, doing stuff by design, it's just so important.
Yeah. So the other question I get a lot is, okay, you're the guide, but why should we trust you? Like, what makes you guys special or different from all the other business brokers, investment bankers, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things. One, we're here for the owner. Like we are not really the transaction at the end. To be honest, we don't care if you ever exit. The M&As, the bankers, they're looking for that. Hey, when the transaction happens, they want to go. We want to work with the owners. We want to be your trusted advisor, your trusted guide. We want to help you achieve your goals and get to where. And I think that's different. You'll find a lot of folks on the front end doing evaluations and all that. You'll find a lot of folks on the back end doing the transaction. But that middle space of someone that's been there, done that, has a proven framework, methodology, experience, certifications. That's, I think, what separates us from the market.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because that's kind of way I felt like when we were looking, and quite frankly, it wasn't looking to sell, right? I think I always tell this story is somebody came to me and said, "Would you ever sell your company?" And I was like, "No, I'm gonna die here." And he kind of looked at me like, "Well, why?" And I had no plan. I had no exit plan, no strategy. Maybe death was a strategy, but it kind of came out like, well, what if something happened to me? What is that fair to my family? Is that fair to the employees that we didn't have a plan? And sometimes we think we're helping people by not strategizing about exiting or succession, but in the end of the day, it's really being lazy and selfish. And so he kind of made that comment to me, and I said, I'm open to it. And sure enough, I think a month after I said that, I got a phone call. It basically was from a friend and said, "Hey, would you be interested in selling your business?" And I was ready for that question, where in the past I would have just stumbled and didn't know what to do. And so that was kind of the genesis of why I believe this was important, was being able to answer this and then to understand is, who did I have to go talk to? I didn't have anybody to talk to. Investment bankers, you know what they wanted? They wanted a check, they wanted me to spend money, and they wanted a transaction. They're just kind of like real estate.
Lawyers, they just want billable hours. It's no one's really in the corner fighting for the owner.
Right.
And that's what we want to be.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say something that might be morbid, might be a little scary to folks. Every business is going to transition.
Yes.
One way or another. It could be death, it could be, so take
Disability,
control.
could be disagreement, could be divorce. Like, there's so many things that can come up in our person's life, and to not have a plan or a strategy, in some regards, is selfish.
It is. And that we want to help, again, just help create that roadmap and help you take control of the conversation. Doesn't mean you have to do anything, but it gives you the confidence, the clarity, and the control of when that phone rings, you're ready.
So digging back into our expertise and sort of why by design, let's talk about some of the things that we do differently. And one of the key differences is that we're SEPA certified. What does that mean, and what is SEPA?
Yeah, it was a term fairly new to us when we started to get into this game, but it's Certified Exit Planning Advisors. It's administered by the Exit Planning Institute, which is literally the industry-leading credential for professional advisors in this space. So it's kind of the best credential you can have. So we knew if we were going to do this, we wanted to be the best of the best. So we went and got that certification, which pairs very nicely with our just our experience growing companies, with experience exiting companies. We're expertise. We have expertise in human productivity tools, and just so combine our experience with what we've done, that certification just fit in very nicely.
Right. I think it's great because it gave us part of a framework, I think, to walk through the stages. And again, through our experience, right, taking this proven methodology, tying it to our experience, kind of gave us a unique way of going about this.
Yeah, it really puts it all into perspective because it's all about driving value. So the certified exit planning certification is all about how do you drive value into the business. And really every decision you make along the way, or a business owner makes, it's either increasing value or decreasing value, right? And when you start to look at it like that, paired with our experience in the framework, again, it just allows you to be very intentional about what we're doing.
Yeah. I think there was certain things in the past that I've done that maybe I by chance did well, through reading and so forth. But through that framework, like we've talked about, getting back to the value gap, the profit gap, looking at value. The other thing that really spoke to me, and I think we did this really well at Advoco when we did it, was the concept of relentless execution. And I love that because I always said there's no such thing as a $1 billion idea, but there is a $1 billion execution. And let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and to me, it's the biggest gap in corporations, right? And it kind of almost goes back to one of the 4 C's. If you don't have the right people, you're not going to be able to execute on what you want to execute on. And to your point, an idea is great, but if it's not executed, it's worth nothing. So relentless execution is just a framework, a 90-day framework we use of where we intentionally set goals. We pick 2 or 3, and then for 90 days, we attack it relentlessly. And we have a whole cadence and frequency and method of what we're going to do over the next 90 days. And then at the end of the 90 days, what I love about this whole framework, end of the 90 days, you ask one question and one question only.
What is that question?
Is it done?
Love it.
And you get to say yes or no. Now, if it's no, you can kind of expand on, well, what happened in the chat. But you don't get to say, well, I got 80% of it. No. Is it done? Yes or no?
Right. And that was the beauty that we focused on, was when we learned that concept. Because when we talk about strategy, we always find out people come out with like 22 things. And we know you've got no shot, right? Zero shot. In that if you can't focus on 3 and deliver, then you're not going to win the game at business. And what we see every day, and I see this in the startup community, I see it in mentoring, is every month they want to change to 3. Which all that tells me is that there is lack of focus. And so the ability to really come up with 3 things that says we're going to focus on this, and then the next 90 days, another 3. How do we get to those 3?
Yeah. So we have another saying, again, I'm a quote person. You're going to get sick of hearing me quotes, but it's people have to weigh in to buy in. As an owner, you can walk into the room and say, here's the 3 things I want you guys to execute on. Go do it. I'll be back in 90 days.
Right.
Again, it's a strategy. We have a framework where we get the team together. We brainstorm. We go through a process. Again, by design, we are walking a team through a process. And at the end of this whole process, take anywhere from 2, 4, 6 hours, depending on the size of the team, they get to choose, with some facilitation and guidance from us,
right,
the 3 big rocks they're going to attack over the next 90 days. So it's not the owner, it's not the boss saying, here's what we're going to do. It's the actual team that's going to be responsible for executing, weighing in, buying in, agreeing that these are important, and then attacking them relentlessly over the next 90 days.
Yeah, one of the things, we kind of got that phrase from Patrick Lencioni, like he really hits something that if people are not weighing in, like they're in the meeting, and if they don't speak up, you know what they're doing when they leave the meeting?
That was stupid.
That was stupid. The old bird's crazy. We're not part of that. You know what? We do this all the time. We'll probably do it all the time and never get things done. And so the key is to get back to that. And so when we do this, one of the things that I think is kind of genius, that's different than a lot of people, is we work on 3 things, right? And do you want to talk about those 3 things that we ask every company?
What's working? Because it's important, but you need to know what's working so you can keep doing it. What's missing and what's broken? And really, it's those simple 3 questions, and you just throw everything on the wall. Nothing is too big or too small to make a list. And it's amazing what kind of comes out, and people will even start going, "Oh, well, no, Marty, your group's working. Your group's doing awesome." And it's almost like a team building in a way, but you're also getting, you're building trust, you're building relationships, but you're also making progress towards these strategic initiatives. So it's a really great exercise that I think has multiple benefits.
Well, one of the things that's so cool about it is we always start with what's working. Because when I watch a lot of sessions, they'll be like, well, what's broken in your business?
Oh,
And
Lord.
oh yeah, oh Lord, right? It just turns into a bitch session or people complain. And so there's, by design, we always start with what's working because it gets people excited. It shows them what they're doing and we get all these positive endorphins and we get going. That to me is how you start. And we used to even do it with our clients and their systems. Like this can be done for really anything, strategic planning. If we're talking about a current software package and what do we need to do, like what's working?
You can do it on a process. Let's just take hiring. You could pull a team together and say, what's working in our hiring process? What's missing in our hiring process? What's broken? And you can scale this up, down across organizations. It's an amazing one of our core values is simplicity over complexity.
Yeah.
And we love these simple tools that are easy to implement and easy to execute, because if it's not easy to execute, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I want to say that again, because as we looked at core values, right? And you've always said this, if you want to see a core value, see how you measure it, see how people act. And again, at our core is everything has to be simple over complexity. And I used to call it the back of the napkin. If I can't write in and explain on the back of a napkin, it's too complex. And so to us, people get so in strategic planning, like so complicated, but you're right. Is it working? What's working? What's broken? And what's missing? And then what we figure out is we just keep doing what's working, and then we go to broken and missing. And within there, that's where the gems are, right? That's where the three things that we find strategically, if we can knock three things out, knock them out, knock them out, knock them out, we're going to be best in class.
Best. Eventually, give time, right? You may not be starting at best in class. You may be starting worst in class. But when you start knocking these out every 90 days and you give time, you're going to move up that ladder to best in class.
And I think when let's tie all this back together. And I think I heard this saying, and we actually, I think, put this on our website, is we empower business owners to take control of the conversation. Talk to me about that.
I think everyone's walked into a meeting, a conference, and just not been prepared. Maybe it's college or something, maybe last week. Yeah. But when you're not prepared or don't have the knowledge or don't understand a process, you just aren't confident in having that conversation, right? So if you're not confident, if you don't know this stuff, and somebody calls you and says, "Do you want to sell your business?" You're automatically at a disadvantage, right? Because this is what these people do every single day, all day long. They just do this. So they're experts at what they're doing. You might do this one time in your entire life. But once you understand what they look for, what they value, how you, again, become intentional and do this stuff, it just gives you that confidence to now go toe-to-toe, have that conversation. When that phone rings and says, "Have you ever thought about selling your business?" "Yeah, I have." What are you thinking? And you're already, now you've kind of got an idea of where your strengths are, where your maybe risks are, and now you're on an even playing field with that person on the other end of the line, which I think, again, it's not a tangible value that's a dollar amount, but it could be, right? If you now know and can get a couple extra $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, it's the numbers, and again, we won't get deep into this, but when we do talk about valuations, it's quite simple math. At back of a napkin, it's either sales times some multiplier or earnings times some multiplier. I mean, in most tech businesses and service businesses, that's how value is created. And so those two values, if you can control both of those numbers, you can control the value of your business.
And again, it's just confidence, right? Once you know the game, it's more fun to play. There's nothing worse than playing a game where you don't know the rules, you don't understand what the. We play a game up north called euchre, and it can be very confusing if you don't know.
Love that game.
I love playing. When people say, "Yeah, I've played a couple times," like, sit down. I'm gonna take your lunch money. But again, once you learn and once you get confident, you just get better at playing it. And so that's kind of what By Design helps the owner do. And again, you asked me earlier what makes us different. I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
We're teaching the owners the game. We're teaching them what
The rules
people
of the
look at.
game.
We're teaching them the rules of the game.
It's so funny. I was on stage with a good friend of mine, and we were talking about hiring practices and so forth. He talked about the rules, and his example is, it said, if you ever played Monopoly with kids, it always breaks down that somebody's cheating, somebody's not following the rules, and the board gets thrown and the game ends.
Yep.
And it's funny is in business, it sounds silly, but when people don't know the rules and they don't know the game, people get mad and they kind of throw their toys in. So I think it's a great analogy.
It is. It's weird. Adults are just big kids sometimes.
We are. Well, I think we're kind of coming up at the end of our time. Is there anything else that you would like? How do you get in touch with us? How can they?
Yeah, the best way is obviously website, bydesignadvisors.com. Advisors does have an S on the end of it. I know some people forget that. You can also find Marty, myself, Tom on LinkedIn. Reach out to us there. We post a lot of these tidbits and stats on there. Reach out to us. We'd love to just talk. Like we call them meaningful conversations. Just schedule a call. We just happy to talk with you about the process, where you at, what's keeping you up at night. And, we like to say, we'll give you the no chip. And if we have a conversation that's not for you,
we understand.
We understand. But we're always here to answer any questions. We're very helpful. We don't charge per phone call or anything like that. Just go to our website, give us a call, and we can figure out what's next.
Pick up the phone.
Let's have a conversation. Again, part of it is what's next, right? Like we don't know if we can help you.
We don't.
Until we talk.
Well, Dale, this has been fun. It's been great talking about this stuff. We've got more stuff coming on our YouTube channel, so feel free to look us up and see what's going on.
Till next time.
Bye-bye.